there Pixies, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today's video is chapter 4 of reading my old Harry Potter fanfiction that I wrote when I was 17. It is completely unedited. This is the original wording. It's not that great as a disclaimer, but it's fun to read through. So if you haven't checked out the first 3 chapters, do go ahead and look up in those cards up there in the sky, and you will see the playlist so that you can get caught up on all the drama that's going on at Hogwarts in 1970s Hogwarts. And with that said, I think we should just get into chapter 4 here. Chapter 4, Lockheed's Mistake. Winter was fast approaching, although it was only October. Snow had been falling heavily for 2 weeks, and it had been almost a month since Sirius and Imelda's argument. They still refused to talk to each other, but Imelda would occasionally talk to James, in which time he would try and get them to talk to each other, to no avail. Lily had tried too, but Imelda would just get angry with her, so any attempts had ceased. Imelda loved the Halloween festivities at Hogwarts, almost as much as Christmas. The Great Hall was always decorated with floating pumpkins charmed by Professor Flitwick. The Fat Friar and Nearly Headless Nick would sing original Halloween songs, and the Fat Lady and her best friend Violet would get almost as drunk as they would at Christmas, so no one would have to remember the password to get into Gryffindor Common Room. However, both Lily and Imelda had to admit that every year since they'd been there, something sinister had occurred on October 31st, the night of Halloween. Imelda believed this year would be different, but would be no different, but hoped that maybe something would happen to change that. Okay, first of all, comment down below and I will put a poll as well, whether you prefer Christmas or Halloween, because personally, I probably prefer Christmas, but I know loads of people love Halloween. So yeah, I want to know, Christmas or Halloween? And second of all, I love the Fat Lady and Violet. I love how they get drunk and just nobody has to remember the password. But I also think it's kind of a security issue, because wouldn't anyone from any house just be able to walk into Gryffindor Common Room, really? In a matter of weeks, it would be the first Quidditch match of the season, an event to be taken very seriously and not to be missed. Even Peeves, Filch, Moaning Myrtle, who would reluctantly emerge from her precious toilet, and the house ghosts attended. James and Imelda were extremely nervous. It was Hogsmeade weekend, and Lily was especially excited to see the only completely wizarding settlement in Britain. She had only ever seen Hogsmeade Station, where the Hogwarts Express would pull up every year. Imelda was certainly not interested in the fact that Hogsmeade was an all-wizarding settlement. She was more interested in going to Honeyduke's sweet shop and Zonko's joke shop. Hogsmeade was a very small village, and Hogwarts students were easily visible by their scarves in house colours. Lily wanted to have a look at some school supplies in Dervish and Bangs, so Imelda, knowing that she would be bored, headed off to Honeyduke's, promising to bring Lily back some sweets. Personally, I would probably go to Honeyduke's, Dervish and Bangs, and the Three Broomsticks to get a butterbeer. That would be my only itinerary. On the way, she passed the Hogshead pub, which hardly anyone went to, as it was dark and rather uninviting. She had heard that only dark wizards ever went there, but as she passed, something caught her attention. She thought she'd seen Professor Lockheed. If this really was only a place for dark wizards and witches, then why on earth would she be there? And if she'd seen Professor Lockheed hanging around there, imagine who else might have, too. No, she had to check again to make sure. She didn't want to accuse Lockheed of being into the dark arts if she wasn't. Indeed, when she looked again, there was no mistaking that shiny, long brown hair, piercing blue eyes, and bright silk clothing, this time in purple. She was sitting at a table with none other than Vladimir, drinking a large brandy and looking extremely intense. They seemed to be on a date. This was confirmed when Vladimir leaned in to kiss her passionately. Oh, how awkward must that be for everyone else that's in there? Granted, it's probably not very many people, but it's still just so awkward. Imelda could not believe her eyes. Maybe they were both dabbling in dark magic together, but even if they weren't, it was extremely reckless of them to be showing a public display of affection when there were people around who would have them tortured for even thinking about having a relationship. It was just not acceptable in the wizarding world for wizards and witches to be with any other magical creatures, or non-magical in some people's view. Imelda felt another presence behind her, and saw something that chilled her blood. It was a friend of Snape's, Avery, and he had a fiendishly evil smile on his face when he saw the professor and the vampire sharing an intimate moment. She knew that this could only mean trouble, and possibly ministry involvement, and she did not want either of them to get hurt. There were some corrupt people working in the Ministry of Magic. Some even served you-know-who himself. Don't we know it? Imelda ran as fast as she could back to Dervish and Bangs to tell Lily what she'd seen, and for the second time she ran head first into Sirius Black, who looked very angry indeed. "What the hell are you doing, Doherty?" "I don't have time for this, Black. Professor Lockheed could be in big trouble." Sirius stopped fuming abruptly and halted Imelda in mid-run. "What do you mean, Imelda?" She did not answer him, but kept on moving, Sirius at her heel. "Get lost, will you?" "Not until I know what's going on." Lily was just walking out of the shop when Imelda got to her, and looked shocked to see Sirius too. "Hey, where's my—" Imelda interrupted her. "Forget the sweets. Professor Lockheed's in trouble. She was seen by Avery with Vladimir. They were kissing." Lily didn't seem at all fazed by this, but Sirius knew exactly what this meant, and began dragging them up to the castle. "What are you doing, Sirius?" Lily asked, bemused. "Dumbledore's the only person who can help with this. It's in the Ministry's hands now, and with Death Eaters working there, it's more dangerous than ever. Most of my cousins work there, and you wouldn't believe the things they do to people. They use the unforgivable curses," he added darkly. After what felt like hours of running, the trio finally made it up to the castle and to the stone phoenix that guarded the entrance to Dumbledore's office. "How are we supposed to get in?" Imelda panicked, but Sirius put a hand up to silence her and said to the stone phoenix, "Cockroach clusters." Instantly, the phoenix came to life, and Sirius led the way onto a stone lift. "I've been here before," he explained, before anyone could ask. "In trouble, no doubt," Imelda muttered to Lily. Sassy. Such a sassy girl. Dumbledore's office was a very grand-looking room, filled with strange magical instruments and books. Exactly what you'd expect from the eccentric headmaster. In a chair at the far side of the room sat none other than Albus Dumbledore himself, smiling up at them and peering curiously at them through his half-moon spectacles. "A good afternoon to you all. And what, may I ask, brings you to my dull office on a beautiful day such as this?" Dumbledore's office was anything but dull, and something told them that he already knew why they were there. Dumbledore popped a Bertie Bott's every flavour bean into his mouth as he waited for a reply. When one did not come, he said, "Come now, don't be so nervous. I do not bite, although on occasion I have been known to. Mr. Black, would you care to explain?" Yeah, that was a really weird line. I know it's supposed to be quirky and stuff, but it's just so awkward. I love it though. "Well, Professor, we believe Professor Lockheed's in trouble. Imelda saw her and Vladimir in the Hogshead, and so did a Slytherin. We think he might tell someone at the Ministry and get them into trouble." Dumbledore surveyed Imelda very closely, and then said, "Ah, indeed, this is a terrible thing to happen. Prejudice is a truly destructive thing. It can be blinding, and is something like dragonpox, you know. A disease. After all, love is the most powerful magic of all. So powerful, in fact, that it cannot be bottled in a potion. Why on earth should we seek to destroy it?" "What can you do, Professor?" Imelda asked shyly. "I will do all I can to make sure that no harm is done to Artemis, or Vladimir. A very lovely man is Vladimir. It is true he is not talkative, but he is wise beyond his 360 years. Well, I suppose you'd better head down to your common room. The visit to Hogsmeade is almost over. Off you trot, and thank you for your deep concern. I shall note this to Artemis. She will be truly grateful." Imelda turned to leave with the others, but but Dumbledore called her back. "That was a very noble thing you did for Artemis and Vladimir, Miss Dougherty, and so is what you are doing for your dear friend, Mr. Lupin." Dumbledore smiled at the puzzled look on her face. "How did you know, Professor?" "I know a great deal of things, Imelda. Mr. Lupin is having a very hard time right now. I believe it might be good for him to have a female to talk to about his emotions, for no man can exist without a woman. I understand Mrs. Black and Potter do not want you to know of Remus's grave affliction for fear of what you will think of him." "What do you mean by grave affliction, sir?" "All in good time, Miss Dougherty. Now, what you did today more than shows that you will not fall prey to the temptation of prejudice. So to me you are more than worthy of their trust, and Remus's." Imelda was truly mystified now. "I still don't quite understand, sir." "Miss Dougherty, are you aware that the Shrieking Shack located in Hogsmeade Village is said to be the most haunted place in Britain?" She nodded. "And do you understand what is meant by the term lycanthropy?" She shook her head. "Lycanthropy is the monthly transformation of a human, whether they be magical or not, into a wolf." Imelda's eyes widened, and her heart felt as though it had dropped into her stomach. Shock horror! Spoiler alert! Remus is a wolf. Well, he's a werewolf, but you know. "You mean a werewolf?" Dumbledore nodded patiently. But what's that got to do with Remus?" "I think you already know the answer to that, Imelda," he replied gravely. "But how? When?" "Oh, long before he came to Hogwarts. He was 4, I believe, bitten by one of Voldemort's followers, Fenrir Greyback. He has a taste for children. Unlike most werewolves, he seems to be completely in control of his actions, strangely enough." Imelda looked incredulous. "Professor, how on earth did you manage to keep a werewolf in the school without anyone noticing?" "An excellent question. Well, it is all thanks to dear Professor Sprout. Pomona really is wonderful, you know. 2 years prior to your first year, Professor Sprout planted the Whomping Willow on our grounds. I doubt any student could get in there unless they knew how, you see. So, naturally, it was a safe place to keep him on a full moon. It leads right into the Shrieking Shack, hence the haunting sounds. He goes to the hospital wing every month to take the wolfsbane provided by Professor Slughorn to keep his wolf side at bay when he transforms." Imelda felt as though she were about to burst into tears. She couldn't imagine the hell he went through every day. She almost wished she could take his place to save him the pain. It wasn't fair that his life had been taken away from him. Honestly, Remus's story just really gets to me, and I read the extra bit that Joe wrote for him about his backstory, and it was heartbreaking. So now knowing that, what I didn't know then, when I was 17, it makes it even more heartbreaking. Dumbledore could see that she was near to tears, and put a gentle hand on her shoulder and said, "Compassion such as yours is extremely rare. I see it in your dear friend Lily, too. You never fail to see the good in people, and that can do a great deal of good in the world. The darkest of wizards will fall for that quality. 'Tis truly remarkable. Now, I suppose you'd better get some rest. I am sure that is a lot to take in." As she turned to leave, she said thank you, and burst into silent tears. If only she had known. The whole castle seemed alien to Imelda as she made her way to Gryffindor Tower. All she could think of was Remus, and how alienated he must feel every day. "Snidget," she said to the fat lady on autopilot, and crawled through the portrait hole in silence. Strangely enough, James and Sirius were there to greet her. They should have been at the feast, but Imelda did not feel hungry. They looked taken aback when they saw her tear-stained face. Imelda wasn't one to cry often, but at the moment she did not care who saw her. However, something in the back of her head told her she didn't want James and Sirius, especially Sirius, to see her at her most vulnerable. James looked uncomfortable when he saw her crying. That was something he could only recall happening once before, and that was during the argument with Sirius. Sirius was a little more intuitive than James when it came to Imelda, and knew that Dumbledore must have said something that meant a lot to her. "Oh, Sirius, how cute." "Sirius told me what happened in Hogsmeade," James said, forcing a jovial tone. "I was stuck with Peter in Madame Puddifoot's tea shop. He should know that only girls with really thick boyfriends go in there. We looked ridiculous." "Oh," Imelda replied flatly. Sirius looked annoyed with James. "What's wrong, Imelda? What did Dumbledore say to you?" he asked, in a more considerate way than James, to show him how it was done, but was surprised to see her look angrily at both of them. "He told me what you didn't," she snapped. "I know about Remus." The boys looked at each other, astonished. They had not expected that. "I admire your loyalty, though, I suppose. If I'm honest with myself, I'd probably have done the same." She trailed off sadly, and then she heated up again. "But what made you think that I would treat him differently if I found out?" "His words, not ours, Imelda," James explained soothingly, and did something he'd never done before. He gave her a hug. He could feel her weight weighing him down as she cried profusely into his shoulders. I'm so sorry we didn't tell you. It wasn't fair. I've known that for a while now." He released her gently and then turned to Sirius. "This is going to prove harder for you, mate. You're just too bloody stubborn sometimes. I'm going to leave you to sort this out between yourselves." Then, without another word, he left through the portrait hole. "Good call, James, good call." There was an awkward silence between them when James left. Sirius broke it first. "Just so you know, I'm not going to apologise for being angry with you about Regulus." Imelda glared at him. "But it was wrong to keep it from you. I was just doing what Remus wanted." Imelda knew that it was hard for him to admit he was in the wrong. "You may be a complete git, Sirius, but loyalty goes a long way with me. I should have understood your motives better." "When did you find out?" "Near the end of first year. We got suspicious about his strange disappearances every month. Can I tell you something else?" He continued, hesitantly, running his fingers through his silky black hair. Imelda nodded slowly. "James and I have been thinking of a way to help Remus. Support him, you know? A way to be with him when he transforms. He goes insane down there in the Shrieking Shack. That's why he howls." "What do you mean?" Imelda asked suspiciously. "Well, at the beginning of the year, Professor Lockheed said that werewolves are calmer when they are with other animals, but being alone or with humans makes them, well, loopy, for want of a better word." There was silence. "So, James, Peter and I thought we could learn to become animagi." "What?" Imelda interrupted. "That's illegal unless you're registered by the Ministry. And you three are underage. Plus it takes years to master." Sirius looked irritated. "I know that, but he needs us." "You're not going to tell, are you?" Imelda hesitated for a long time and thought about it carefully. She could understand their desire to help Remus, and she admired their clever plan, but it was logically wrong to let them continue. If they were found out by the Ministry, they'd be expelled and have their wands snapped in two, and Remus wouldn't see them again anyway, so all their hard work would be in vain. "Fine," she said resignedly. "Thanks," Sirius said awkwardly, and the pair stood, not making eye contact until they heard the Gryffindors coming back from the feast. Okay, there wasn't too much commentary in this chapter because it's quite intense, and actually I was really into it as I was reading. I think that was actually one of the better written chapters, and yeah, I really enjoyed reading that. If you enjoyed listening to it, then please give this a big thumbs up, and I will see you all next time, my dears. Goodbye.